Hi, I'm Ralph Preston, and every Tuesday we have our Stroke Buddies Recovery and Science Zoom meeting. And today we've got back for the second time Genevieve Richardson. Genevieve is a speech and language pathologist, but she also deals with wellness, which is kind of an overview kind of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about from striving to thriving, surviving to thriving, the 8 areas that every stroke survivor should focus on, because there's more to recovery than just physical therapy. So welcome back, Genevieve, and take it away.
Thank you, Ralph. I appreciate being back, and I appreciate all the work you're doing in Stroke Buddies and all your groups and your YouTube channel. You're an inspiration.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, hello, everybody. Great to see those of the faces that I can see. Thank you all for being here. So, what I wanted to talk about today, and I would like this to be a discussion. This is not about me saying I'll give some information, but I definitely want feedback and your thoughts and what it's like on your end to live with having had a stroke. So in my practice, I'm a speech pathologist and I work with aphasia. That I would say is my specialty area. For those of you who don't know aphasia, or if that doesn't impact you, it is a language change, something where it's your speech, whether it's finding words, holding on to your thoughts, being able to read the way you used to or write. And it impacts everybody a little differently. And you may have had a stroke and not have been diagnosed with aphasia, but you may have little things that aren't working quite the way they used to before your stroke, or it's concentration, or it's how you perceive the world around you. So what I've come to really understand, especially in these last 4 years in private practice, that when I'm working with someone who has aphasia, we can't just talk about the language problem. We have to look at the family. We have to look at, because you are a whole person. You are not just your right arm or your left arm, right? You are not just your speech. You are not, whatever it is that makes you you. You are a whole person, and we can't dissect you up and just address the one area that's changed. As each of you have experienced your stroke differently, you have different challenges. Maybe it's just your walking, maybe it's just your right leg that doesn't work, but you have most of your arm back, or vice versa, whatever the case may be. How those changes impact you impacts those who you live with or the people that you interact with. You may have issues with anger. You may have issues with, who am I now? We each have a certain identity and what makes us who we are, and how we see ourselves, as well as how other people perceive us. So what I've come to realize in my private practice, that they're kind of narrowed it down to 8 areas that I need to address when I'm working with someone. They came to me for their communication. But it's these 8 areas that we also have to address. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, is these 8 areas. And this is where let me talk about one area, and then I would love your input. If you have questions, comments, I'm happy to hear them. Quick question for you, Ralph. If someone's on the YouTube channel, Are they able to put in a question that you would see it or no?
No,
Okay,
we'd have to have somebody monitoring that and then
gotcha.
feeding the questions over here.
Okay, no worries. But maybe if there are
And
questions or comments after, we can respond to
Eventually,
those later.
I hope to get there, but we've just started doing the YouTube month or so ago.
I gotcha.
One thing I'll say is I've been starting to use the term instead of wellness, which is, I don't know, it's not overused. It's certainly, I've been using the term wholeness.
Wholeness. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah,
I'm
because we are a complete person and you have to address all parts of the person in everyday life and certainly, I mean, in normal life, in non-stroke life, and you certainly have to in stroke life.
absolutely. What
Yeah.
I'm doing is I'm pulling up my wheel here. There we go. Now I've got it. Now I'll share my screen with you and share this. This is a little tool that I made and I use this in my practice. I use it. Are you able to see that, Ralph?
Yes.
Okay. I use this wheel in my practice, typically during a consultation. And the reason we do it, it goes, so if somebody signs up to work with me, this goes out to them before I meet with them. It's a way of kind of self-reflecting. It's a way of you thinking about what is your independence like. So I'm going to grab my little annotation tool here. Gotta love Zoom. So if we start over here, independence. Everybody wants independence, right? From the time we are little and kids, all we've ever strived to do is be independent. I want to do it. You know, when we, these milestones like getting your driver's license or, registering as an adult to vote or 21, you get to go drinking, right? We're always striving for that next level. And when a stroke has happened, you've lost a lot of that independence and now you got to build it all back again. And that that's a challenging thing to do just depending on how the stroke impacted you. So we want um, the folks that we talk with to give a rating on their independence. So 1 is like no independence, and a 5 is independence like you expect it to be, or perhaps pre-stroke, however you think of that. Then we want to look at thinking skills. Well, what are thinking skills? Thinking skills have to do with concentration, memory, how you solve problems, how you communicate with others, meaning, um, do you have a filter
Hmm.
on, right? That filter thing can sometimes go away after a stroke and you just say whatever it is, however, right? However you want to say it. So thinking, those are what thinking skills kind of entail. Often, even if you don't have aphasia, you can have an impact in your thinking skills. Maybe it's that filter. Maybe it's not being able to hold your thoughts if the TV's on in the background. You go to tell your spouse something and the TV's playing and you get distracted and you lose your train of thought, totally derails, and you never get back to it. So, how are your thinking skills? And so we do a rating of 1 to 5 on that. Then we have this broad category of physical health. This is everything from your arm and your leg and transfers or walking or getting around in a wheelchair. But it's also things like, how are you eating? Are you drinking enough water? Do you take your pills on time or do you need a lot of pills? Or, think about again, this is the whole health thing, everything that it takes to run your body, right? And how that body works. If you think of your body like a car, are you keeping the oil changed? You keeping gas in the gas tank? Do you have new brakes? These kinds of things. How are you maintaining yourself? And you give that a rating of 1 to 5.
You don't want that check engine light to come on.
Heck no. When that comes on, that means expensive, right? It's almost never just a little thing. So we want to be proactive, because remember, that stroke just took away from you control. It just slapped you upside the head or knocked you down, or however you want to think of it. And so we've got to build it back. So communication, again, this is a broad category. This could refer to, an aphasia, if there is a speech or language issue in there. But communication is also, well, how do you communicate with your spouse, your significant other, your kids? Are you reactive to your significant other? I had this client once, he was 49 years old when he had his stroke. And it was due to an unknown heart issue that, because of his age and physical fitness at the time, it never would have been caught, so unfortunately he had a stroke. Anyway, the long and the short story is he would come home from work, and I would often see him at the end of his workday while he was still at work, but, kind of everybody's left the office. He'd go home and his wife would say, well, how was speech therapy today? Just as a way of understanding, it's like asking somebody, how you doing? Well, how was speech therapy today? And he would bite her head off. And we really had to get to the bottom of why was it that he was doing that? What was just that very innocent question where she wanted to be part of the process causing him to react in that way? And what came out is that he felt shame that he had this language issue. It wasn't horrible. He went back to work, but it wasn't who he saw himself as. And when his wife brought up anything related to the speech change, he got very reactionary. So I'm seeing a couple of head nods. So this is resonating. So communication is, how do we interact with the people that are around us? The people that we know and the people that we don't know. So we have to look at that. So what would your rating be on a scale of 1 to 5? So then, and if you guys have any questions, comments, please pop them into the chat and we'll go through it. Let's talk about emotional health. What does that mean? Anybody? Hey, Aaron, can I pick on you?
What do you want, Genevieve? What can I do for you?
What do you think emotional health means?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't think I know. Other than we deal with our emotions. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's an excellent start. It also has to do with, how are we coping? Did we grieve after a stroke? And everybody does this in a different way. This same example, this gentleman that I was talking about who would bite his wife's head off. We were making progress in therapy, but it wasn't until we helped him understand that he never took the time to grieve, to be angry, to move through those stages of grief and processing. And when he worked through that, wow, did our therapy ever take off? It was remarkable. So emotional health is about, how are you dealing with this? Again, you just got knocked down by stroke. what you were doing, your plans just changed. Your life changed. What you thought was going to happen is different. So emotionally, psychologically, how are you coping with that? Do you have depression? Depression is often common after stroke because the chemicals, everything's out of whack. So there's the depression that can respond to medication, and only your doctor can really help you with that. But there's also the depression of if you haven't coped with the stroke, you could feel depressed. And then there's also isolation, which can fall under emotional health, but that also falls under social connection. So again, these are broad categories trying to help you think through all the areas of your life. Is that John Brummer I see right there with a nice sailboat in his background? Hello, John.
Yes, it is. We got a
Nice.
question in the chat, Genevieve. You're asking for questions, and we got
Yeah.
one saying, what are the top 5 tips for friends and family to communicate with a person with aphasia?
Great question. First, top 5. Ooh, only top 5. Okay. First ones, you need to make sure you have attention. You have to be looking at each other. You can't yell from the kitchen. You got to make sure the background noise, mute the TV. You know, again, if you're in close proximity together with eye contact, that takes care of the first 2. Depending on the aphasia, right? Because aphasia we know is different for every person, just like stroke. And those challenges are different for every person. Sometimes you have to lead with setting context. Honey, I have a question for you. Pause. And I mean pause definitely, just a second. Honey, I have a question. Would you like to go out to dinner tonight? Something as simple as that can help with communication. The other thing is so if that's the first 3, so
Slow down.
attention, get rid of the background noise, preface what you're going to say. It's almost like giving context, right? You're trying to help the person with aphasia get on track with you. If you're going to change and a sub point to point 3, if you're going to segue, well, let me say it this way. If you're going to change the topic, say, I'm changing the topic. Right? Okay, we'll go out for Italian. I have something else I want to tell you that happened today. Pause. And then you go into whatever that is. Just like a newscaster, could be talking about the car crash or the car chase, on the 5 freeway in Los Angeles. And then they go, well, that was some exciting footage. Well, now let's switch to a sweet story. And then they have this cute little girl with a puppy, right? Car crash to cute girl with a puppy. How do you do that? You have to build a bridge. You have to have a segue. You have to do that with folks who have aphasia. And actually, I would say from a marriage counseling perspective, you should probably do that anyway, even if there is an aphasia. Right? Because we talk over each other, don't we? We interrupt. No, not nice facial expressions, Ralph. Right? No, we don't do that. We don't jump to conclusions. Okay, back to strategies. Don't finish people's sentences or fill in words for them unless they ask for help. Honey, you're stuck. Do you want me to help? Or maybe you've worked out what I often work out with my folks with aphasia, some kind of a cue. Maybe it's something very subtle that you can use when you're not in the house. You're out to dinner and there's another couple with you at the table, and your husband is the one with aphasia and he's having trouble getting his words out, and his wife catches his eye and does their gesture, whatever. And then she knows, yeah, whatever it is, Ralph, whatever that gesture is, that she knows she has permission to help. Does that make sense? So we literally train this. With one of my other clients, he would get stuck on his words, and he now turns to his wife and he says, honey, help me out. And so he gave her permission, and so that's all copacetic then, right? So that's a really important. So don't jump in, don't assume you know. And then the last really important tip would be verify. If I'm talking to someone with aphasia and they tell me something, my best action is to say back what I heard or what I think they are meaning, because maybe their words aren't coming out. And just verify, is this what you meant to say? Because sometimes when you have aphasia, how your voice sounds is different than the words that come out. So there might be a conflict in the message. And so your listener might not know which way you're going. So if you say it back as you heard it, reflect it back just like a mirror. And then get that verification. And then that's going to help a whole lot with decreasing communication breakdowns or misunderstandings.
What about slowing down, being deliberate, but not talking like they're 5 years old?
Oh my gosh, you hit it on the head. See, that's what I said. It's hard to pick just 5.
I know.
I know. But yes, you are absolutely right. If you slow down just a smidge, that's what I'm doing right now. I can talk a whole lot faster. I just slow down a little bit. It's subtle, and I pause. And that's subtle. And often that is just enough time to help that person with aphasia process information. Because it is about processing. Processing is slower. Muscle processing, right? Whether it's your arm and your leg is slower, thinking processing, language processing can be slower. So that would be huge. And never, ever, ever, ever talk,
And as far as
baby talk to
aphasia
someone.
is a language disorder, and
Oh, somebody's playing me back. Never, yeah. You can talk a little slower, you can pause, but you're still you, still your personality, still your tone of voice, and you're not talking down to that person. Other thoughts? Other questions? So we could do a whole talk about communication strategies. But if you guys have specific examples you would want to talk through, we can do that too if we have time.
Judy, I'll also tell you that Judy's the one to ask the question, that if you on my YouTube channel, Genevieve did a great talk pretty much on this subject called Busting the Aphasia Myth. And if I knew how to send it to you, I'd send it to you. I could.
I can find it. What brought up the question is I'm having lunch tomorrow with a friend that has aphasia, and I wanted to make sure that I was sensitive to how we communicated.
I love that. Judy, thank you for saying that. One first thought would be ask her to tell you what she needs. Because that kind of addresses the elephant in the room, right? You both know she has aphasia, but just say, I understand that you've got challenges. What is my best way? Do you like me to slow down? See what she will say. And then that way you've now opened the door for her to advocate for herself.
I love that.
I think that's a great way to do it.
I agree. Thank you.
And if I can support, please reach out. I do have my own podcast. We go through a lot of aphasia stuff. If you're interested in that, we could possibly put a link to that in the chat if you guys want to check that out. Tons of episodes right now. The episodes are all about the holidays and how do we make the holidays aphasia inclusive. Now that, we're going to have, some people are having big gatherings that they wouldn't normally have. How do we help people that are less familiar with the person with aphasia interact with them better? And we can apply these same principles to someone who has dysarthria, someone who has apraxia, any way that their speech or language or thinking even has been impacted, these strategies can apply. Hello, Bill, 17th year stroke survivor. Go, Bill. Love that. All right, so let's keep moving on with the wheel. Please, anybody else if you have questions, drop it in the chat. Social connections. What we know, and the research backs this up, we have to be social. We have to connect with others. Thank goodness for Zoom. Probably the best thing that came out of COVID was that people had to learn how to use Zoom. They had to learn their technology, because I don't know where all of you are, but I know some faces on this group and we're all in different states. And if we didn't have Zoom, we wouldn't have this kind of ability to connect with others. We are social people, humans in general. And we also know that when you have a stroke, or put any other diagnosis, you have cancer, you have multiple sclerosis, you have whatever the diagnosis is, there's going to be a kind of an isolation that happens. Whether you yourself are isolating from others, maybe you're not responding to phone calls or text messages, or you decline invitations to go out to coffee with your friends like you used to do. Maybe you're embarrassed about whatever it is you've got going on, so you just decline. But then there's the other side of it where the people around you may not know how to deal with how you are different. They may be embarrassed. They may not know what to say, how to act, what to do. So Judy, that's why the timeliness of your question when you said you're going out to lunch with a friend who has aphasia, we have to get used to asking. My friend who is in a wheelchair, my first inclination is to jump in and do and help. And the best thing I could do was ask him what he wanted me to do. Do you want me to get the door for you? Do you want me to assume you need help, or should I wait for you to tell me? And then once we had that, that took 20 seconds. I had clarity. He had clarity. We were on the same page, and then it was no big deal anymore. But when you have a new diagnosis, friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, they don't know to do this. They don't know to ask, because either they're afraid it's contagious, right? Which it's not, or they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to say something or do something wrong. So it's just easier for them to stay away and not do.
Hey, Genevieve.
Yes, sir.
I heard a great tip that I use. I have dysarthria. I do not have aphasia, but I do have slurred speech. But Judy, I really think a great thing works for me, and I've heard, don't ask open-ended questions. How was your day today? Don't do that. Just say, don't ask open-ended questions where they have to fill in blanks.
That's a great point, Aaron. So you can, but this takes thought and planning, right? Because when we communicate, it's very automatic. We don't think about it. And we know our friends and family who are good at this and who are not so good at this, right? Every person is different. So when you're communicating with someone who has any kind of a communication impairment, limiting the scope of what their answer is going to be will make it a lot easier for them to give you an answer, and also probably for you to understand what the answer could be. So Aaron, I appreciate you bringing that up. So it's what we say is closed questions, like, would you like more water? That's a closed-ended question. It's waiting for a yes, no answer. Or a choice, would you like water, hot tea, or a Coke? Right? Giving a choice. More closed-ended questions versus, what would you like to drink? We have everything. That might, sometimes giving too many choices or leaving it way too open, it's too hard for the person with aphasia to narrow it down and make a choice.
Judy, make sure you listen to that because it's really important. That will help. I deal with a lot of aphasia people, and if you could keep your questions closed, it'll make huge difference.
Well, this person has a new grandson. So, of course, I would like to ask her about her new grandson, Owen.
Yeah,
That's
I've been
not a
having.
closed question.
Yeah,
Well, and
Genevieve.
maybe she has pictures. Maybe if she carries a smartphone and has pictures, it would. So that's the other thing we got to use is our technology, right? That's another way to keep the conversation going, even if the words are not completely working. So if her speech locks up or something, ask her to show you some pictures of Owen. No doubt she has 100 on her phone. Right? And then you
Yeah.
guys can just mutually talk about that picture. Oh, it looks like he's having so much fun playing with the new puppy. You know, whatever it is. And then that way it takes a lot of burden off of, because we don't want a quiz. But that's a hard thing to do, to think on the spot to, well, if I don't want a quiz, what do I do? Well, that's why I brought up about the pictures. It's just one example of something you can do. Or if the conversation goes into a lull, pull out your phone and bring out some pictures of something, right? Because it's about, yes, you want to know about Owen, but it's about connecting with that person. It doesn't matter. You could talk about the menu items, you know, or, you know, if it's one of those restaurants that has picture menus, you know, I think of like Denny's and IHOP. They have a picture of all their food. Doesn't matter what you talk about, it's about connecting.
And be patient.
Yes, ma'am. Paula,
Patient.
thank you.
Because don't be afraid of the silence, because
So good.
because sometimes people with aphasia, I have aphasia, it takes a lot of work to get the voice out.
Yeah. I love
Be
that.
patient.
Thank you, Paula.
And we are always filling in, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, and what you're trying to do is not overwhelm them, because that will cause them frustration when they can't respond in a way that they would like to. And frustration's never good for communication.
I did an episode about Godzilla brain, is what I called it. When we trigger, so right, so we have our reptile brain, you know, think of like your brain stem, you know, think of the small part inside the middle of your brain that controls your respiration and your heartbeat and your digestion and, you know, all those things that we don't think about. That's your reptile brain. That's what keeps us alive. And then you have your outer cortex, which is your thinking. That's the part that makes us human, allows us to talk and communicate and do all the things that we do. When emotion takes over, it's like taking off. So if here's your reptile brain and here's your higher cortex, we start getting frustrated and it's like taking off that thinking part of your brain. And now you're back to the reptile brain. And now that makes us reactive, puts us in fight or flight kind of reaction. So we want to make sure we don't get to that point of frustration. Paula, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
So how does frustration or other emotions impact your speech?
I get anxious because I have the thought, but I can't get it out of my mouth soon enough, you know, for a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So anxiety just makes it a whole lot harder.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're doing pretty well.
Thank
Very
you.
well. Very well.
But when I first had aphasia, I couldn't even say my name. It's 4 years ago.
4
Yeah.
years. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Keep moving forward, Paula. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the wheel. Social connections, we have to have them one way or another. If you have found yourself getting isolated, let's figure out what you can do. What's one small step you can do to start breaking out of that isolation? Is it texting someone if you can text? Is it making a phone call? Is it walking outside, to pick up your trash cans and when you know your neighbor's going to be outside doing the same thing and you strike up a conversation? What is something small that you can do, taking small steps to reduce that isolation and increase connection with others? If you couple different ways to think about it, what's the easiest way to do it? To start reaching out to people. Versus maybe there's a relationship in your life that you've become estranged since your stroke. Is it time to work on repairing that? I don't have the answer for you because this is a very individual question. Do you go easy and build up on small wins and build your confidence? Or do you just tackle that one relationship that would mean everything to you if there was less isolation and more connection? Okay, individual choices. So let's move on to growth mindset. Yes, John, I absolutely see. Social connections, groups, being in stroke buddies, joining on a live Zoom or YouTube like this, getting in, putting comments in the Facebook groups, doing a live group class, even if it's on Zoom. All of those can be social connections, but some of that can even be part of this growth mindset. How are you at taking on new things, learning new technology, maybe finally learning how that doggone smartphone works, other than just making a phone call and carrying this computer in your pocket? Right? Are you willing to learn? If you don't know how to do something, do you know how to look it up on YouTube? I started looking up all the different ways you can use the health app on your iPhone. There are a lot of amazing features just built into these phones, and you don't even have to have the newest iPhone for it. They have similar on Android phones. So if you have a smartphone, there's lots of different ways you can use it. What is your growth mindset? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to challenge yourself? If you don't know where to find the answer, can you ask somebody to help you figure out how to find the answer? It's about taking it, it's about taking on new challenges, because what we know from neuroplasticity and all the research on it, you have to challenge yourself. If you just keep doing the same thing day after day, that's not a challenge. Ralph knows this very, very well.
I preach it.
Absolutely, you do.
I also
So,
tell people to get involved with, in terms of involvement and growth and community, to get involved with their old or find new hobbies, volunteer, and get involved in things like church or any other kind of community groups or
that's right.
whatever for socialization. And if anybody invites you to do anything, just say yes.
Say yes and go and figure it out. Because when you allow yourself to be vulnerable in a safe way, say, I don't know what I can do, but I want to do. So can you help me figure it out? That is a challenge. You are pushing yourself and you're opening new possibilities, new doors. I'll give you a personal story of mine. 10 years ago, my family and I, we moved from Southern California to just outside of Boston. We're in this wonderful town called Sudbury. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't have a job. I had my kids were young, I want to say 3rd grade and 5th grade. And for the first time in their lives, they were going to have to take a school bus. And then my husband was working in the city. So I'm like, I can't work. Like, I got to be here. I got this house I got to set up, whatever it was. And just down the road from my house was a senior center. So I called the senior center and told them, who I was, what I think I could do to be helpful. And this wonderful man named Ed called me back. And we probably talked for an hour on the phone about all the different initiatives they had going on at the senior center. And next thing I knew, I had a route doing Meals on Wheels. And I loved it. I loved it. So I had a Tuesday, Thursday route, and then I would be available because it was always a lunchtime delivery. So it didn't interfere with me being available for the bus for the kids. And then in the wintertime, they did what was called sand bucket delivery. And what that meant is that we'd fill up these 5-gallon buckets of the sand mixed with ice melt, for those of you who live in the snow climates. And so the seniors could call into the senior center and order 1 or 2 or 3 buckets to be delivered to their house. And then they would tell us where they wanted it delivered. The idea behind it was you put it next to the front door. All they had to do was lean out the door, throw some down on their front porch, and that gives them better footing and less falls. Anyway, I got to doing this, got both of my kids involved. We would go to the sand lot. We'd fill up 50 buckets, stack them up. Then I'd do deliveries. They'd go with me. And it was the best. I loved it. I miss it. If I was still there, I'd still be doing both of those things. But I didn't know what I could do until I reached out to try it. And what I also know, and Ralph and Aaron know, you got to put yourself out there.
You really do. I think you and Ralph are bringing up really, we used to, at least in my life, and what I've seen out there, many strokes of isolate and create a bubble around them and don't put themselves in those places that are difficult. When I first had my stroke, I reclosed and isolated myself. And until I began to put air in my bubble and began to put myself out there, it actually became more like a therapy, going out and being like putting myself, like you said, vulnerable place.
Mhm.
Right,
And
yeah, I was going to say something similar. That's what what my just say yes thing was. I noticed in
Yes.
my own recovery and in dealing with many stroke survivors that we tend to talk, especially in the early days, we tend to come up with the reasons why we can't do that. We talk ourselves out of a lot of stuff. So you have to just say yes. And I have an ongoing series actually where I put myself out there and I title it, Put Yourself Out There. And I show myself like bowling or dancing or, they're usually social activities and also, taking a shot at it. I hadn't bowled in 50 years. It was a challenge for my brain as well. You got to make sure you let go of the ball at the right time or let go of the ball.
As you're rolling, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, that 5-step and slide thing is really, I'm pretty well recovered. That's tricky. Anyway, you challenge yourself, you put yourself
That's right.
out there, you just say yes.
And the other thing I want to swing back around to is, why do people not put themselves out there? Maybe it's going back to identity. Maybe it's
Sure.
going back to not having coped with this horrible thing that happened. But it's a way of reframing, of thinking about it in a different way. Ralph has built this Stroke Buddies. He's impacting thousands of people with the work that he does. Aaron is impacting thousands of people with the work that he does. So it's about finding where's your spot, or hooking up with somebody else that's doing it and seeing how you can help them or get the word out or whatever it is. Hi, John. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I started my own stroke group in the town I live, so
Love
I'm with
that.
similar people, and that makes it easy for me. So it's easy to do.
You're not alone. Yeah, calling
Yeah.
the local hospital or rehab center and saying,
Right,
can we start a support group?
right.
Or doing it on Zoom.
Or even a rest home. Go,
Absolutely.
right.
Just find a way to connect. There's always something. But if you're isolating, or someone that's isolating, reach out to them. Reach out to them and don't give up. Keep trying. Small steps, small rocks add up over time, right? You can still fill that bucket even if it's the small rocks. All right, so let's move on to joy and satisfaction. I wanted that to be something shorter, but I don't know. I kind of like how it stands. Do you feel joy? Do you feel satisfaction? Yes, the stroke is here. You can't go back. I wish we could. I wish I had that magic wand. But how can you move forward? What strengths do you have that you can build on? Can you reflect back and see where you've come from to see where you want to go next?
Focus on what you can do and don't focus on what you can't do.
This is all, I call this a strengths wheel. You figure out where you are. So if you were to fill out this strengths wheel, here I can do it so my thing doesn't disappear. Maybe for independence, and so it actually starts rating over here. Maybe you're a 4. Maybe you can take care of a lot of stuff for yourself, right? You don't have to have other people helping you do physical stuff to get ready. Maybe you know how to get an Uber, or you can call the Metro cab to get to your doctors, or your spouse takes you, whatever. Maybe your thinking skills, you can work on your concentration a little bit. Maybe your physical health, you could drink more water. You could eat a little bit better. Communication, maybe you are biting off your spouse's head, and so you're going to give yourself a 2 on that rating. Emotional health, yeah, you got some work to do. Maybe coping, grieving, just kind of working through that. Social connections, maybe you could put yourself out there a little bit more. Growth mindset, maybe you're not quite there. So the point is joy, satisfaction, maybe you're not quite as high as that. Maybe you're here. Then here's what you do. You connect the dots. And I'm a visual person. I like to see where I am. Now, if you look at that and that's your wheel, and you think about the categories, if you were to work on one area, what would that be? If you could put some effort, some mindfulness, some thoughts and some actions into one of these areas, where would that be? What does that look like? Who do you need to talk to get help or support or ideas? And that's the idea behind this wheel. You don't have to tackle all of these areas. Pick one and you start accumulating those wins, getting those little rocks, putting them in your bucket. Excuse me. And then maybe your rating jumps up on social connections from a 2 to a 3. And maybe you're like, okay, that's good for now. Now I'm going to shift to my physical health. Maybe I'm going to start doing chair yoga and drinking more water. And then you do that for a while, and maybe it's enough for you to feel like you moved your dot, one level up. And maybe you're like, okay, I'm good with that now. Let's pivot to another area. The idea is this is a self-reflection tool. It's about helping you get control. Because when you start, I don't know about you, I can only speak for myself. My inner voice is very different than my outer voice. And what I mean by that, I can be more negative in my head and I don't finish my thoughts. Sometimes it's just concepts and not full like sentences. And I find my thinking gets in my way of my doing. And that's something I have to pay attention to for myself. Like I want to stay small. I don't want to put myself out there. But look where I am here today. Aaron, I have another personal story. I know we're running out of time here, Ralph. Aaron, over a year ago, gosh, I don't know, way more than
No,
whatever. I can't keep track of the time. But Aaron challenged me to do a live show. For 10 months, I went live on Facebook and Instagram every week. I did my podcast live. I had guests come on. We did it live. And had I not done that, I wouldn't have gained the skills that I have today. Because this is not, you have to sometimes overcome your own self-limiting beliefs, your own doubts, because it is hard to put yourself out there. But we have to do it. I'm
that
here.
is a really awesome point. I gotta say, that's life changing. Honestly, as a stroke survivor, if you put yourself out there like Ralph, Genevieve, if you help people, if you use what you've gone through and help people, you'll find you'll get back 10 times what you put out. It's amazing. And I know Ralph and Genevieve can speak to that for sure.
Well, you as well, Aaron, and John, what you're doing with your support group and the other groups that you participate in, John. Not to leave any of the rest of you out. I just don't know you like I know these other gentlemen. But it is about, because it's not about you. If you take the focus off on me, how I'm gonna look doing a live show that first time I did it, or first time Aaron had me on his live show, and I know we're streaming it to like his channels, my channel, terrifying. Holy cow. But what I had to release that. I had to, because that fear keeps you from moving forward. Because if you know why you're doing something, like when I volunteered in Sudbury at the senior center, I did it because I needed to have that connection to people. I needed to know I was being in service, just like what I'm doing now, coming on the podcast and reaching out to people and trying new things. Fear gets in the way. acknowledge it, and then go for it. Right? Aaron, I imagine it was terrifying for you the first time you did your first live show. Ralph, you figuring out how to record yourself doing all those crazy rehab things you did with your soup cans and weighing down your walker and putting one foot in front of the other on that low wall in your yard. I mean, we all had to figure it out. But if we show up as real people, then people understand and we just keep moving. So that's my
You
wheel.
get better, you actually get better. The more you put yourself out there, the better you get. The better
That's right.
the more you heal.
That's right.
Absolutely. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do the. I don't like being on camera. I had fear is the biggest, probably biggest challenge in life. It's also most definitely the biggest fear in stroke recovery, in my opinion. And so I had to, I made a conscious decision that even though I don't like being on camera, I was going to start doing exercise videos. Same with hosting Zoom meetings. And volunteering is absolutely a great way to meet. You meet quality people when you volunteer because they're giving back. And the whole thing about Aaron was saying about, you get 10 times more. I've always lived by the line, it is in giving that we receive.
True.
So if I may take this last 2 minutes, I'm still sharing my screen. What I wanted to show you guys is I wrote a book. Here's the cover. Let me get rid of this thing on the side. So that's what I'm calling it, Rediscover Life After Stroke. And it's based on this wheel. It's based on these 8 areas, and it's a workbook. It's not about me being preachy, because that's not that's never ever my intention. It's about helping folks do, right? Keep moving forward. That is a huge phrase. I use it all the time in a very, very many areas of my own life. And I say it with my clients as well. So I wrote this book because this is the big framework of what I look at when I'm working with someone who has aphasia. We look at all of these areas. We talk about, I may not write goals for them because that's not why they came to me, but it is still part of the program. And then if I'm working with someone with aphasia, I have yet another wheel that is more detailed. It's all about communication. It really breaks communication down into another 8 areas. I have a separate wheel for folks who have Parkinson's, because I also work with them to make their voice louder, make them more understandable. But we also have to look at the whole person when it comes to Parkinson's, because it's different from stroke. But there are still communication issues. And then the last wheel I have is about brain health, which is kind of a play on this same idea, the same wheel, but how do we maintain our brains? Are we eating right? Are we sleeping? Are we socializing? Socializing is on all of these wheels, folks. It's so important. And coping and grieving and stress management, and it's all it's all interrelated. So anyway, I wanted to write this book as a first step for those who are interested in, making some gains. So it's a workbook, it's got prompts in it, it's got room to write. It's going to be available on Amazon, but I'm not releasing it just yet. But what I wanted to offer to any of your listeners, Ralph, if you will sign up with your email address, when the book comes out, I will give you a free manuscript. You can download it onto your digital device and use it. You don't have to buy it. But what I'm asking for is I want to get the message out to the stroke community that you can do things. You can take small action steps to improve your quality of life. And I'm hoping that with this book, it could be a first start for that. But I can't do it. I wrote it, but to get it out there to the world, I need help. And what that means is I'm going to do a book launch with this, and I'm going to need Amazon 5-star reviews. So in exchange of giving you this book, and if you feel like there's something in there that has helped you, give you some kind of leg up moving forward, I would like to earn that 5-star review from you. So if you sign up with your email, I will have to have Ralph get that out. I wasn't able to finish getting that all together.
What I always do is, like in your last talk, I put all your contact information and everything. And if you give me like a link where I'll say to get a free copy of the book, go here, give me a link that they can go to and drop their
Got
email.
it.
We got Bill and John have already done it in the
Love
chat.
it. Thank you.
Uh,
I will save that chat for myself if anybody else wants to go in there. But the point is, we're going to be releasing this. It's going to be when you sign up with your email, I will send out an email every week that just got little tidbits. It's going to be little parts of the book, something for you to start thinking about and working through on your own. And then when we get closer to the launch, that's when I'll give much more instructions about reviews and all that kind of stuff.
Also, you and I are talking about you coming back to when the book does get released and talking about it.
Love
If you
that.
want to do that, you're more than welcome. Just like if you wanted to do part 2 of this, you're more than welcome.
Absolutely. Love that. And questions, if I can support any of you on your recovery, I am happy to do it because I learn from you. When you ask me questions, it helps me learn from you to keep making what I do more impactful, to make sure I'm not painting with a broad brush, that I can give the specifics and give things that are useful. Okay, Ralph, I'll stop talking.
Oh, that's okay. You might want to grab the chat again because people
Yep.
keep adding their
Love it. Love it. Thank you all. Yeah, so we'll get that out. So I'm really excited about that. So you'll see we got the compass on there on purpose. There's a dedication to the survivors, each of you for being who you are. But the wheel is in here. Well, so we got 10 chapters. It's a pretty good size workbook. But anyway, I'm excited about it.
Well, thank you for taking your time and sharing your knowledge with us.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate it. We all appreciate it.
Thank you, Ralph, for the opportunity, and Aaron and John. And, I love seeing faces when I'm talking. I like seeing smiles. I like seeing reactions, head nods, even the head shakes. Didn't get many of those today, but I appreciate each of you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. Okay, stop the recording.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got a little bit of stop the stream. And okay, I'm caught up now. I always got mechanical things to do before and after the meeting.
Always. Thank you all. I did grab the chat.
Okay, good. Well, I can email you the text file
Wonderful.
just to make sure.
Perfect. All right, everybody, have a lovely day wherever it is you are, and hope to see you again in the future.
Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can.